Good afternoon or evening, everybody, and welcome back to another weather forecast here by Age with the Forecast. And I have another update here on the tropics as the Atlantic is getting very interesting. Invest 95L will most likely become a tropical depression by the next advisory or so. So I would not rule out the possibility if we get tropical depression within 95L very, very soon here, within either possibly looking at the 8 o'clock update or maybe even the 11 o'clock advisory. As well, Fred is now weakened to a tropical depression, but likely as it is over the warm waters right now off Cuba to become Tropical Storm Fred once again. So really watching out for the Caribbean to have another threat, as well the U.S. As well in threat as tropical storm watches have been issued for southern Florida ahead of Fred. So we have a lot to talk about. But without further ado, let's get in the video. So here's a look here at the actual satellite imagery here on tropical depression Fred here, and you can see it obviously has lost a lot of overall transformation as it went over the very high elevation land mass, obviously across the Dominican Republic and Haiti. And it is now quickly moving towards the west northwest. Obviously, right now there's the actual low pressure itself. You can kind of see that nice low level, that low level circulation right there. You kind of see a good amount of actual vorticity west northwest, or sorry, counterclockwise vorticity. You can obviously see that really good amount of spin around that low pressure, so it still has that good amount of vorticity. However, a lot of the convection is kind of now just centered across this to eastern portion, the eastern band. You can kind of see LA's convection burst just towards the Cuba and just towards the west area of Turks and Caicos. So overall, a lot of convection is kind of starting to develop once again. It would, and I would definitely not rule out the possibility if this thing looks a lot better by tomorrow morning, if it gets actually get and get into a diurnal minimum. Obviously, it's ahead of the Bahamas. It's likely going to stay ahead of the very warm waters here, and most likely will not touch Cuba or the coast or the even inland areas. So it should not have a threat anywhere really, land interaction wise. So it definitely has a chance to get its act together before it spills into the warm eastern Gulf of Mexico. But here's look at the actual satellite imagery. You see a lot of lightning as well developing across that latest convection burst. But overall, the eastern quadrant is not looking too shabby. However, the western quadrant is really non-existent, just a few scattered showers and a small area of convection, but it's really, really open this whole system. However, obviously, since there is not much of dry air threat, it shouldn't really be a threat, even though it's quite in the open right now. So here's a look here at the actual 5-day tropical weather outlook here by the National Hurricane Center. This is the 2 p.m. advisory. So there we have a high chance of development for the next, let's see here, I believe it's for the next 5 days, and then it's a medium chance for the next 48 hours. So we do have a 60% now, very high chance of development here for the next 48 hours. So we definitely could see a tropical depression as early as possibly, I say 11 o'clock tonight. Really depends on what ASCAT sees and whether they have an actual LLC. If they do verify to have LLC, I would not obviously hesitate to call this a tropical depression. But at this point, I would still call this an invest in an area of interest. However, I really want to see more support and obviously more satellite or overall more support here on this actual system to even call it a tropical depression. But right now it's at 70% as well for the next 5 days. So you can see though, low pressure does not quite have a close circulation, which obviously I just mentioned, and we still have a few disorientation showers and thunderstorms. However, it's moving westward at about 20 miles an hour in the tropical Atlantic, and it looks like overall conditions will become more conducive as it goes to the west northwest here. So another threat here for portions of the Dominican Republic and Hispaniola, and overall portions of the Northeast Caribbean. So back-to-back threat here, as obviously Fred did move in the exact same area. Fred still at 35 miles an hour, 1,012 millibars, and moving west northwest at 12 miles an hour. Obviously, it's going to start getting its act together as it continues to go over the warm waters in the Caribbean. So here was the last look at ASCAT. Obviously, this is not the most, this is not the latest update on ASCAT. Actually, I'm still waiting for that. But here's what they actually showed. So we did have 30 knots, which is basically still 35 miles an hour across portions of the northeast of that convection burst right there in the overall convection itself. You can kind of see though, we see those areas of stronger winds kind of to the northeast here. It's exactly what we are going to be looking at. Obviously, typically in storms, the strongest winds and overall are typically in the northeast quadrant. Well, does not really look like there's actually a closed low within this. It's kind of the vectors are all over the place, really. So it's not looking like um the greatest. So this is obviously not really supporting a low level or a low level circulation, really. However, It's going to be, we have to keep a close eye on it for the next update or so. But here you see 30 knots there, 1,010 millibars, which is basically what was supported within this ASCAT. But overall, going to keep a close eye on the next ASCAT and see whether that supports that low level circulation. And if that does, I would not hesitate to call this a tropical depression, because obviously it is 35 miles an hour at this point. And obviously, I would not rule out the possibility this has become great. So I think this thing has a lot of potential. The conditions are very conducive in the long run and the long track. So I think this could definitely become a pretty significant threat for the Caribbean. And obviously, I don't really like overhyping storms, but this one definitely has caught my attention. Here's a look here at the actual latest 5-day tropical weather outlook, 5 o'clock track. And there you see we do now have tropical storm watches for a portion of south central and southwestern Florida. You can see the Keys, obviously Key Largo to Key West and Tortuga Bay, as well as portions near Naples, as well are under that tropical storm watch. And watches are still in effect there for portions of Cuba, including the northern coast, as there's going to be some tropical storm winds, gusts, obviously not sustained. Likely to be, say, a tropical depression for the next 24 hours or so, but likely to become a tropical storm overnight. Most likely from a journal maximum overall to great conditions as it starts to move west-northwestward to a northwest turn and become a tropical storm once again just before the Keys, and possibly that's going to be around the 2 a.m. time frame or so, so can't rule out the possibility for it transitioning overnight, making landfall there around noon or midday across portions of the Keys, and then it's going to continue to go kind of west-northwestward to the point where it starts going due north, and it is expected to make landfall there for portions of Apalachicola and the Mexico Beach region. And obviously, it's going to continue to become a tropical storm up till really far inland into portions of southern Alabama. And then it begins to be a tropical depression as it goes into the border of Georgia and Alabama. So likely to start doing a northeast turn once it kind of goes like that towards the northern Georgia region, and most likely will bring in some heavy rain and as well possibly some light to moderate flooding across portions of the lower Appalachian Mountains. But definitely keep a very, very close eye on this right now. So here to look at the actual peak forecast. So for those who know, the peak was at 1.65 miles an hour, and now the peak is at 50. So there's actually a downtrend with this getting much stronger in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. However, I would not rule out the possibility of seeing 60, but since there is no 55, it's kind of hard to have the margin there. It's either 50 or 60, so it's going to kind of really hard. So I think that that's exactly why they do have 50, because obviously there was a 55. I think if that existed, that would definitely be the peak for sure. However, just a transition from 50 to 60 is a pretty big jump there. But overall, looking at the cone all western Florida there, as well, even going to deep into Georgia. So we actually may see as well some good wind gusts overall for Fitzgerald, Georgia, Albany, even to Dalton, Alabama. So overall, going to be seeing some good winds, even far inland as well. But the main threat, though, will be far inland as well in the actual coast itself, the flooding. So let's actually get now a deeper depth for 95L, obviously. So we're actually going to get a bit more models to jump on with in the system, obviously, as it's been an area of interest and over on Invis for quite a while. So we do have a good amount of models jumping on this forecast now. So I'm going to be saying overall a potential track mainly targeting the Leeward Islands there, U.S. Virgin Island, Puerto Rico, and as well Hispaniola, which is exactly where obviously Fred was a threat, and obviously where Fred eventually formed just south of Puerto Rico. So this is going to definitely bring in a higher threat than Fred for all of these places, although the Dominican Republic got hit by it when it was a tropical storm. Fred, obviously, this is definitely going to be posing a bigger threat than what Fred posed for these areas, because obviously this has a lot better conditions long term. So I think this could definitely become a very good system. I would not rule out the possibility of a hurricane within the system. I don't typically like saying that word this early. However, there's a lot of confidence and everything's really looking good about it. There's not much SAL, really little to at all. Really strong moisture bubble within the system, part of the monsoon wave. So as it goes towards the west, across portions of the U.S. Virgin Islands for the next 3 days or so, it's going to definitely be a threat. So really watching out for you in the Leeward Islands there, U.S. Virgin Islands, that general region, the Lesser Antilles, right here. I would definitely keep a very close eye on this system if you guys are in that region, because this will most likely move in your area within the next 3 days or so. The actual track guidance, though, at 18Z, really high confidence now. A few models are getting this to a category 1, while the majority are kind of having it to a moderate to high-end tropical storm. And obviously, a few are still hesitant in having it at a weaker tropical storm, while a few as well, maybe 3 or 4, having it not form at all. However, based on the conditions, which I'll be looking at, which I'll be showing you very, very soon, I think this could definitely become a tropical storm with the next 30-ish hours or so, and I could definitely see it becoming tropical depression with the next 18 to 12 hours. So I definitely have a good amount of confidence within the system, and it could definitely become our next hurricane. So it's definitely quite interesting what we are looking at this point. A lot of the models obviously kind of having it at a tropical storm, and a few, good majority, having it at a high end. So I think it's definitely something to keep a very, very close eye on. So here's a look at the actual 12Z GFS, and they are still really hesitant within shoving 95L. The global models, except you, are really not shoving 95L, which is very interesting because considering the conditions, considering the upward trend within the National Hurricane Center, really as well, the H-Warf and H-Mon are actually showing this being quite significant, which I'm not going to say I agree with them, but I do agree this could definitely get hurricane potential. But what the H-Warf and H-Mon are showing are just way too much. But the European as well is getting something very interesting with this. But you see, even 42 hours, 54 hours, nothing at all with 95L, but they do have an area of low associated within a trough, but they just do not have it getting to the strength at all. While GFS really as well is struggling, having Fred come back to life as well. So, I mean, GFS is really, really downtrending on really both of these systems. CMC as well, nothing at all with 95L. However, they do have a little bit more within Fred, having 1,005 millibars, making landfall there across portions of the Big Band / Panhandle region. So CMC is a little bit better on Fred, but they still as well do not have anything really at all for 95L. So the Icon as well. This is another 18. This is actually 18Z. The Icon as well, really not showing anything. So I'm not sure exactly why I'm also not jumping on this. Not like there's a trough or a PV streamer or anything that's really affecting this storm here. However, Icon as well. Icon's actually a little bit stronger than the CMC, which is a very interesting character. Typically, Icon typically tends to underreact or under forecast a lot of storms, but they as well are very consistent within Fred. So CMC and Icon showing it Fred probably becoming a 40-45 mile an hour tropical storm again. That's definitely not worth 50% or 50 mile an hour worthy, really. So even though they are showing Fred again, they're definitely downtrending on the actual strength itself. Let's now look check out the vorticity. So obviously GFS really has nothing at all with 95L. There is an area of vorticity associated with the trough within 95L, but they don't have it getting the winds nor the actual low pressure itself. And obviously GFS really has very weak and disorganized vorticity as well within within that obviously. Let's actually now look the let's see here if we can actually get a look here at the European vorticity. So here's look at the European. The European is showing something very, very, very interesting here. Look at that. A good system there and actually a good amount of vorticity overall. So that's definitely very interesting what the European is showing here. Completely different to what the other models are showing. And you see the area of vorticity there for Fred. And then you kind of see the European kind of has a weakening a little bit of that vorticity, but overall very interesting as well. So I think the European is definitely hinting something very interesting. I'm actually going to kind of skip looking at the ridge. It's going to explain the ridge and all that. However, really, it's still there's still a lot of inconsistency within the models that I decided I'm not going to talk about the ridge. I will talk about that when it gets closer. And then the H-Warf here. H-Warf is a monster storm here, getting it to within the next 63 hours. Only 1,008 millibars, but once it gets into the actual good Caribbean, they have it completely rapidly intensifying, getting to 984 millibars and going far, far south of actually Puerto Rico, most likely because of that ridge starting to get due westward within the easterly shear and the easterly trade winds. But that's definitely very interesting what the H-Warf is showing here and actually getting up to 967 millibars just out of Hispaniola. I think we all know that is not going to happen because let's see what they have 10-meter wind wise for that. I mean, let's see, they probably have a good category 2, category 3. So yeah, they want to get here and up to, let's see here if I can move my screen further to lower. And they want to get it up to, let's see here, 93 knots. So yeah, getting it to a category 2. Let's see what the actually H-Mon wants to have as well. I know H-Mon as well kind of doing a or at least I thought it was doing an H-Warf move, and they kind of as well getting decently strong 999 millibars, but only 51 knots. And this is actually quite reasonable, if I'm being honest. I think this storm could definitely have hurricane potential, and then they have it up to 60 knots for 1,005 millibars in the next 120 hours. But overall, very interesting for 95L.